YouTube, it's Joanna Delilah. I'm just going to do a video on photographic makeup. This is not a makeup tutorial, but more of a talk through about photographic makeup for training makeup artists and anyone who's just interested in how to apply makeup for photos. Okay, this is a huge topic actually. I do want to try my very best to keep it in under 10 minutes if I can, so sorry if I'm babbling too quickly. First of all, I'm going to put it in a nutshell and then I'll expand on some of the topics. But in a nutshell, photographic makeup needs to be a bit heavier than ordinary makeup. Often, have you ever found you've done your makeup and it looked gorgeous, but it just doesn't, the camera doesn't do it justice. Often, especially if you're using a flash, it will just lighten everything and all the colour kind of just doesn't come out on the camera. So for photographic, you need to make sure you've got a good amount of coverage on the skin, and you often need to apply more blush than you would normally apply. That's one of the key things. Sometimes a bit more contouring doesn't go amiss as well for photos. And sometimes up a shade for the lip makeup and eyebrows can be a little bit darker. Years and years ago, photographic makeup used to be boom, like a ton of makeup on the face, really quite cakey. But as cameras have got more and more sophisticated, makeup artists need to up their game, and we don't really layer up quite so much for photos as we used to. One of the things that's really important to consider though is powder. Even if the brief is to do a dewy skin, you don't want shiny skin. So always make sure checking your powder, and particularly down the middle of the face. And you'll always need to be on set with a powder brush or a puff to touch up and have a look at how the shoot is going. So that's really the only change in makeup in terms of how you'd apply it. All of your techniques that you would normally do would be the same. It's just a bit of a heavier hand in terms of some of the colours, which won't show up as well, because sometimes, especially with flash photography, they can make you look a little bit washed out. So don't get too concerned about, sounds a bit mad, but don't worry too much about what it looks like in real life. Photograph it and have a look at it on the screen, because that's what you know needs to be spot on. And that's why I think sometimes we don't go heavy enough, because we think, oh crikey, this looks too strong. But if you take a photo of it, it sort of takes it down a step and works really well in the photo. So that's really the main thing. In terms of powder, you do need to watch out for too much flashback, and some HD powders are notorious for this. And the ingredient that causes a lot of trouble is titanium dioxide. So if that's too far up the ingredient list, it's not a powder that I would recommend for flash photography. So look for, you know, a powder that doesn't cause flashback. There are loads of great ones. I like the RCMA no colour powder. That works really well. I find that photographs nicely without flashback. Flashback is where you take a photo and the face looks 2-3 shades lighter. Another important thing for photographic makeup is to prepare the skin nicely. So the better the skin prep, the better your whole day is going to go. When you apply your skincare products to the skin, give the skin on the model skin, or if you're doing your own, a nice little massage as you do it, and that gets the blood flow into the skin, and it will help you get a nice texture, but also gets a little bit of a glow going on in the skin as well. Consider the lighting and the location of the shoot. Is it going to be indoors? Is it going to be outdoors? In a studio? What sort of lighting setup is the photographer going to use? Because there are so many different variables, and you'll only really know. There's not really a set way that I can sort of say this is for this, that is for that. All I would say is take a photo on set, have a look on your back of your phone or back of the camera at how the makeup is photographing and adjust it accordingly. So when we're in college, when we're assessing you for photographic makeup, we will of course look at the makeup in front of us, but we're more concerned looking at the photo. For us, it'll be just in the back of our phones, but on a shoot you'd look at, usually they have the camera connected up to the laptop, so normally you'll be able to see on screen how it's looking, but you adjust it to that. So you want to make sure that it's looking good on screen, more so than how it looks eye to eye, which sounds a bit counterintuitive for makeup artists to be like that, but we're producing an image and that's what we're looking for. There are loads and loads of different styles within photographic makeup. So you might be doing makeup for a commercial shoot, so it could be an advert for something. It might be, I don't know, an advert for coffee or washing liquid. Any advert that you see will have had involvement from a makeup artist. So even if it's just nothing to do with makeup whatsoever, and often in that type of scenario, makeup needs to just not even really be noticeable and just takes a real back seat. And the skill in that is a lot more than you'd think, actually, because a lot of us in makeup, you know, we've got all these wonderful products and we want to show our skills and, oh, this is going to be beautiful, that's going to be amazing. But it depends what your character is and what your scenario is as to how much you will do. So there's commercial photography, there is more sort of creative, high fashion, editorial photography. And on that side of things, quite often the skin is quite natural. So whilst I've said heavy coverage is key, it all depends on the brief and it all depends on what the photographer is going for that day. So editorial, quite often you see a lot in editorial, which I love, of a real clear skin. You might have freckles, you might have dewy skin. But again, your skin prep would come into that and be really, really key. So on an editorial, generally speaking, you try to keep the coverage quite light. So you would just use concealer on blemishes where you need it, make sure everything's really well blended and the makeup is quite undetectable, and then you can play about with your design and do some creative work on top of that, depending on what, you know, the theme is. And then just the last thing I wanted to touch on is mood boards. So if you're working in fashion and doing creative makeup, working on a photo shoot, everything like that always starts with a mood board. Mood boards could be like a Pinterest board, it could be just like a photo collage like you've got in your phone. Sometimes they're like a huge big actual board. And a good mood board has got a range of images on it, so it will not just be a photo of different makeup looks. It'll have hair, it'll have clothing, it will have, could be photos of like colour swatches, could be a scenery or even architecture or buildings, anything that kind of collectively gives you a vibe for what the shoot is trying to achieve. So mood boards are always a really good starting point for a photo shoot, as are face charts as well. So for my students, when you're doing your photographic makeup, for everything you do, you'll have a mood board and a face chart and then the photo. And what we'll be assessing you on is how the photo looks on the screen, much more importantly than how it looks face to face. All right, I hope that helps give you a little bit of an overview on photographic makeup. For my students, this is, as I say, the next unit that we'll start working on anyway. And we'll look at a few different themes within that. But always remember, photographic makeup generally needs to be heavier, generally needs to be quite well powdered, always needs to have good skin prep. And that's basically it. Thank you for watching. Take care. Thanks.